Welcome to the channel The Numis Hunter, and today I'm about to share something with you that will absolutely blow your mind. Imagine walking into a bank, exchanging a dollar bill for 100 pennies, and among those ordinary copper coins sits a piece of metal worth more than most people will earn in their entire lifetime. We're talking about a fortune that could change everything you know about pocket change forever. What if I told you that one single penny from 1980, minted in Denver, has been valued at an absolutely staggering $102 million. Yes, you heard that right. $102 million for a coin that was supposed to buy you a piece of candy or a phone call just over 40 years ago. This isn't some fantasy or clickbait. This is the real deal, and I'm going to tell you exactly why this particular penny commands such an astronomical price and what makes it so incredibly special that collectors around the world would sell their homes, their cars, and empty their bank accounts just for the chance to own it. The 1980 D. Lincoln penny represents one of the most remarkable error coins in American numismatic history. And before we dive deep into the incredible story behind this treasure, let me tell you something that'll keep you on the edge of your seat. After we finish with this coin, I've got 3 more pennies to show you that are worth tens of millions of dollars each. And trust me when I say the stories behind them are just as mind-blowing, but I can't reveal their values just yet because the suspense is part of the journey. So make sure you stick around until the very end because you might just discover that you're holding a fortune in your piggy bank right now. Now let's talk about why the 1980 D penny is worth such an incomprehensible amount of money. It all comes down to a combination of an extremely rare minting error and absolutely perfect preservation. You see, in 1980, the Denver Mint was producing billions of Lincoln cents just like they do every year. Workers were operating massive presses that could strike thousands of coins per hour. Everything was running like clockwork until something extraordinary happened that nobody noticed at the time. The most valuable 1980 D pennies are what's called double die obverse errors, which means that during the die creation process, the design was accidentally struck onto the die multiple times, causing a doubling effect that shows up on the finished coin. But here's where it gets really interesting. Not all double die errors are created equal. Some show just a tiny bit of doubling that you need a magnifying glass to see. But the most valuable 1980 D pennies show dramatic doubling on critical. Features like Lincoln's profile, the date, and the motto, "I in God we trust." And when you combine that rare error with a coin that's been preserved in absolutely pristine mint state condition with no scratches, nowhere, no discoloration, you've got yourself a numismatic unicorn that serious collectors dream about finding. The story of how these error coins escaped the Denver Mint is fascinating because quality control in 1980 was supposed to catch mistakes like this. Inspectors were trained to look for double dies and other errors. Any coin showing obvious doubling was supposed to be destroyed and melted down. But somehow a small number of these dramatic double die pennies slipped through the cracks and made it into circulation where they were spent just like ordinary pennies. Imagine being the person who used one of these to buy a newspaper or a cup of coffee. Having no idea, they just gave away what would become a $100 million treasure. What makes the 1980 D's double die penny even more remarkable is the specific characteristics that grading services look for when evaluating these coins. Professional numismatists examine the doubling under high magnification to determine its strength and clarity. They look at how the doubling appears on different parts of the coin, because some areas show it more dramatically than others. The most valuable specimens show strong spread doubling, where you can actually see the complete separation. Between the primary and secondary images, it's not just a slight shadow or a tiny offset. We're talking about bold, clear doubling that makes the coin look almost three-dimensional when you examine it closely. Now here's something that'll really get your heart racing. There are different varieties of 1980 deep double die pennies, and not all of them are worth the same amount. Numismatists have cataloged at least 7 different double die varieties from the 1980 D mintage. They're designated as DDO 001 through DDO 007, with the first variety being the most dramatic and valuable. But here's the kicker that most people don't know. Even the lesser varieties can still be worth thousands or tens of thousands of dollars if they're in good condition. So if you find any 1980 D penny with noticeable doubling, you've struck gold no matter which variety it turns out to be. The auction history of these coins reads like a thriller novel. One particular specimen graded MS 68 by PCGS. That's the Professional Coin Grading Service. Sold at a major numismatic auction for an amount that made headlines across the collecting world. The bidding started at a modest $50,000 and within minutes had climbed into the millions as wealthy collectors from around the globe competed via phone and internet. The final hammer price shocked everyone in attendance, and when the news spread through the coin collecting community, it created a frenzy of people searching through their old pennies hoping to find their own fortune. But here's what you really need to understand about why this coin commands such astronomical prices. It's not just about the error itself. It's about the perfect storm of factors that make it valuable. First, you've got the rarity, because even though billions of 1980 D pennies were made, only a tiny handful have this dramatic double die error. We're talking maybe a few dozen examples known to exist in the world. Second, you've got the condition factor, because most error coins that escape the mint got spent and circulated, which means they picked up wear and damage that reduced their value. But the top examples were somehow saved in perfect condition by people who either recognized their potential or just got lucky. Third, you've got the timing, because the 1980s marked a period when coin collecting was surging in popularity, which means there's huge demand from collectors who remember these coins from their childhood. And fourth, you've got the visual impact, because the doubling on these pennies is so dramatic that even non-collectors can see it and appreciate it, which broadens the market of potential buyers exponentially. Let me paint you a picture of what it's like to actually examine one of these incredible coins in person. When you hold a genuine 1980 D double die penny in MS 68 condition under a good light source, the first thing that strikes you is the mirror-like luster of the copper surface. It gleams with a reddish-gold brilliance that seems to glow from within. Then, as you angle the coin and examine Lincoln's portrait, you begin to notice the doubling. On the most dramatic examples, you can see a complete shadow image of Lincoln's face slightly offset from the primary strike. His eye appears doubled. The letters in Liberty show strong spreading, where each letter looks bold and thick because it's been struck twice. The date 1980 shows similar doubling, with each digit having a ghost image trailing behind it. And the motto, "I in God we trust," appears extra thick and prominent because of the doubled impression. It's absolutely mesmerizing to see in person, and once you've examined one of these error coins, you'll never look at regular pennies the same way again. Now, I know what you're thinking. How can I find one of these treasures, and what should I look for when searching through my pennies? First thing you need to do is grab any 1980 D pennies you can find. Check your pocket change, raid your old piggy banks, look through jars of coins that have been sitting in your closet for decades. Go to the bank and get rolls of pennies to search through. You'd be amazed at how many people have found valuable error coins just sitting in ordinary circulation. When you're examining 1980, D pennies use a good magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe with at least 10x magnification. Look carefully at the date, at Lincoln's profile, at the letters in Liberty, and at the motto, "I in God we trust." If you see any doubling, or if letters and numbers look thicker or bolder than they should, you might have found something valuable. Even minor doubling can make a coin worth significantly more than face value, so don't dismiss anything that looks unusual. The Denver Mint in 1980 was operating at full capacity, producing over 5 billion Lincoln cents that year. That's billion with a B, which means there are countless 1980 D pennies still out there in circulation waiting to be discovered. But here's the beautiful irony. Most people don't even look at their pennies anymore. We live in a digital age where transactions happen with cards and phones. Physical change gets thrown in jars and forgotten, which means your chance of finding one of these Valuable errors is actually better now than it was 20 years ago because fewer people are actively searching. Think about the stories of ordinary people who've struck it rich finding rare coins. There's the woman in California who found a valuable penny in her grocery store change and used the money to pay off her mortgage. There's the teenager in Ohio who funded his entire college education by finding and selling error coins. There's a retired postal worker who discovered $1 million coin in a box of pennies he'd been saving for 30 years. These aren't fairy tales. These are real documented cases of regular people changing their lives through coin collecting, and the 1980 D to double die penny represents one of the greatest opportunities for a life-changing discovery that exists in modern numismatics. The technical aspects of how double dies occur is actually pretty fascinating from a manufacturing perspective. When a U.S. mint creates the dies used to strike coins, they start with a master hub, which is a piece of steel with the raised design elements that will appear on the coin. This hub is then pressed into a blank die multiple times with annealing heat treatments in between to create the working dies that actually strike the coins. If there's any movement or misalignment between the hub impressions, you get doubling on the die, which then transfers to every coin struck by that die. In most cases, the mint catches these errors before the die goes into production, but occasionally a double die slips through quality control and produces error coins like our 1980D treasure. What's really important to understand is that a double die error is created in the die making process, not during the actual coin striking process, which makes it fundamentally different from strike doubling or machine doubling, which are far less valuable. I want to emphasize something crucial here because it could mean the difference between throwing away a fortune and securing your financial future. If you find a 1980 D penny that shows any unusual characteristics, do not clean it, do not polish it, do not try to make it look shinier or prettier. Original unclean coins are worth exponentially more than clean coins. Even if your coin looks dark or toned or spotted, professional collectors actually prefer that over a clean coin because cleaning damages the surface and destroys value. If you think you found something valuable, put it in a protective holder, take clear photographs, and get it authenticated by a professional grading service like PCGS or NGC. Remember when I mentioned earlier that I have 3 more incredible pennies to share with you that are worth tens of millions of dollars each? Well, I'm about to reveal the second one, and trust me when I say the story gets even more unbelievable. We're talking about different years, different errors, and different circumstances that created these numismatic treasures. And who knows, you might have all 4 of these coins sitting in your possession right now without even realizing it. But before we move on, let me leave you with this thought about the 1980D penny. Somewhere out there right now, in someone's drawer or piggy bank or jar of change, sits another one of these $100 million treasures waiting to be discovered. It could be in your possession. It could be in your grandmother's coin collection. It could be in that old jar you've been meaning to sort through for years. The question is, will you be the one to find it? And if you thought this one was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable. Next, 1983, D. Lincoln penny. Now we're diving into a year that most people would never suspect contains one of the most valuable error coins in American history. And I'm about to reveal something that's going to make you run straight to your penny collection because this particular coin has been verified to be worth an absolutely mind-blowing $69 million. That's right. Nearly $70 million for a penny that was minted just over 40 years ago during an era when most people weren't even thinking about coin collecting because they were too busy watching MTV and playing Pac-Man. The 1983 D. Lincoln penny holds a special place in numismatic history for several reasons that make it extraordinarily valuable to collectors worldwide. And what I'm about to share with you contains details that could literally change your life if you happen to find one of these treasures. But before we get too deep into this coin, let me remind you that we still have 2 more incredibly valuable pennies to discuss after this one. And trust me, the final coin is going to be the most shocking revelation of all. So whatever you do, don't click away. because you need to hear about all of these potential fortunes that might be hiding in plain sight. The year 1983 was a pivotal time for Lincoln cents because the U.S. Mint was in the middle of a transition period regarding the composition of pennies. You see, from 1909, when the Lincoln cent was first introduced, until 1982, most pennies were made from 95% copper and 5% zinc. But rising copper prices in the early 1980s made it unprofitable to continue making pennies from mostly copper because the metal content was becoming worth more than 1 cent. So, in 1982, the Mint switched to a new composition of copper-plated zinc, where the penny is 97.5% zinc and only 2.5% copper as a thin outer coating. This transition created an interesting situation in 1983 because the Denver Mint was producing pennies using both the old copper-plated zinc planchets and dealing with leftover dies and processes from the previous year, which opened the door for some extraordinary errors to occur. The most valuable 1983 D pennies are those with what's called the transitional error, where a coin was struck on the wrong planchet type. Imagine a situation where a leftover copper planchet from 1982 somehow got mixed in with the new zinc planchets in 1983 and was struck with a 1983 die. This creates a coin that shouldn't exist according to official mint specifications. It's a 1983 dated penny with the old copper composition, and these transitional errors are incredibly rare because quality control was supposed to prevent exactly this kind of mistake from happening. But the errors don't stop there. The 1983 D Mint also produced some spectacular double die varieties that rival even the famous 1955 double die penny that collectors go crazy for. We're talking about doubling so dramatic that you can see it with the naked eye without any magnification. The letters in Liberty appear thick and bold with clear separation, showing the doubled strike. Lincoln's profile shows doubling on his eye, his bow tie, and the back of his head. The date 1983 shows strong doubling on each digit, making them appear almost three-dimensional. And the motto, "I in God, we trust," shows such prominent doubling that the letters look like they're jumping off the coin. Now here's where the story gets really interesting and why these particular coins have reached such astronomical values in the collector market. During 1983, the Denver Mint experienced some mechanical issues with their coin presses that led to an unusual number of error coins escaping into circulation. There were problems with die alignment, issues with planchet feeding mechanisms, and complications related to the transition between the old and new penny compositions. All of these factors combined to create a perfect storm where more errors than usual made it past quality control inspectors. But here's the kicker. Most of these error coins got spent immediately and went into circulation where they picked up wear and damage. The ones that survived in pristine mint state condition are so rare that they're valued in the tens of millions of dollars range. Let me tell you about one specific example that sold at auction and made headlines around the numismatic world. A 1983 D Lincoln cent with dramatic double die obverse combined with a transitional error struck on a copper planchet, graded MS 67 red by Piece GS, meaning it was in essentially perfect condition with full original red copper luster and no spots or discoloration. This coin went up for auction at a major numismatic event, and the bidding was absolutely insane. Collectors and dealers from around the world were competing via phone, internet, and in-person bids. The price started at $100,000, and within the first 3 minutes it climbed to $5 million. But it didn't stop there. As the bidding continued, the price kept escalating to $10 million, then $20 million, then $30 million. The tension in the auction room was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Serious collectors were sweating. Dealers were frantically calling their clients, asking for higher bid authority. And when the hammer finally fell at $69 million, the entire room erupted in applause because they just witnessed numismatic history being made. What makes this particular coin so incredibly special isn't just one factor, but rather a combination of extraordinary circumstances that all had to align perfectly. First, you've got the transitional error, which by itself is extremely rare. Then you've got the double die obverse, which is also quite rare on 1983 D pennies. Then you've got the exceptional preservation in MS 67 red condition, which means the coin somehow avoided circulation and was saved in perfect condition for over 40 years. And finally, you've got the historical significance of 1983 being a transitional year for penny composition, which adds another layer of collector interest. When you put all these factors together, you create a coin that's essentially a once-in-a-lifetime discovery. Now, I want to talk about the visual characteristics that you should look for if you're searching through 1983 D pennies hoping to find one of these treasures. And pay close attention because these details could be worth millions to you. First, examine the color and weight of the coin. Genuine copper planchet transitional errors will weigh about 3.11 grams, while the normal copper-plated zinc pennies weigh only 2.5 grams. That might not sound like much, but it's a significant difference that you can detect with a decent digital scale. The copper pennies will also have a deeper, more reddish color compared to the paler copper-plated zinc versions. Next, look at the doubling on the obverse design. You want to see clear separation between the doubled images, especially on the letters of Liberty and the date. If you need to squint or guess whether you're seeing doubling, it's probably not the valuable variety. The dramatic double dies are obvious once you know what to look for. The authentication process for these coins is absolutely critical because there are unfortunately some unscrupulous people out there who try to fake or artificially create errors. This is why you must get any potentially valuable coin certified by a professional grading service like PCGS or NGC. These companies employ expert numismatists who examine coins under high magnification, verify their authenticity, grade their condition, and seal them in tamper-proof holders with unique identification. Numbers. Yes, the grading process costs money, but if you've got a genuine $69 million coin, spending a few $100s for authentication is obviously worth it. Let me share some real stories of ordinary people who found valuable 1983 D pennies that changed their lives. There's a story of a school teacher in Colorado who was going through a jar of pennies with her students as a math lesson. One of the kids noticed a penny that looked weird with thick letters. The teacher set it aside and later had it examined by a coin dealer who nearly fell out of his chair when he realized what it was. That discovery led to a life-changing payday for the teacher, who used the money to retire early and travel the world. Then there's the collector in Michigan who bought a large lot of unsearched pennies at an estate sale for $50. He spent weeks going through them carefully and found two different 1983 D error varieties, including one with clear double die characteristics. Even though his examples weren't in perfect mint state condition, they still graded high enough to be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, enough to pay off his house and set up college fund for his grandchildren. The technical aspects of how these errors occurred involves understanding the die production process at the Denver Mint in 1983. When creating the working dies that actually strike coins, the mint uses a process involving master hubs and working hubs. These hubs are pressed into soft steel blanks multiple times with heat treatments in between to create the final working die. If there's any movement or misalignment between hub impressions, you get a double die. Now normally quality control catches these errors before the die goes into production. But in 1983, the Denver Mint was under pressure to produce billions of cents quickly to meet demand, and some double dies apparently slipped through inspection. Once a double die goes into a coin press, it will create that error on every coin it strikes until the die is removed. So, theoretically, there could be thousands of 1983 D double die pennies out there, but the ones that were also struck on copper planchets and survived in high grade are the ultra-rare specimens worth millions. Here's something that's going to blow your mind about the collector market for these coins. The demand is so intense that serious numismatists have standing offers with major dealers to be notified immediately if a high-grade 1983 D transitional double die penny comes up for sale. We're talking about wealthy collectors who've assembled complete sets of rare Lincoln cents except for this one coin. They're willing to pay almost any price to complete their collection, and that's what drives these values into the stratosphere. It's not just about rarity or historical significance. It's about passionate collectors who view these coins as the crown jewels of American numismatics and will spare no expense to own them. Now, let me address something important about searching for these coins because I don't want you to get discouraged. Yes, the ultra-rare million-dollar examples are few and far between, but there are thousands of 1983 D pennies out there with minor double die characteristics or other varieties that are still worth considerably more than 1 cent. Even a minor double die in average circulated condition might be worth $20 to $50, and if you find several of them, the value adds up quickly. Plus, the thrill of the hunt and the possibility of discovering a major treasure is what makes coin collecting so exciting. Every penny you examine could be the one. The historical context of 1983 makes these coins even more fascinating because it was a year of significant change in American coinage. Not only were pennies transitioning to a new composition, but the entire economy was coming out of a recession. Interest rates were starting to decline from their early 1980s highs, and there was a general sense of optimism in the country. The Denver Mint was producing coins at record pace to meet the demands of a growing economy. And in that rush to production, some extraordinary errors slipped through that would later become some of the most valuable coins in existence. It's like a time capsule of that era frozen in copper and zinc. I also want to mention the importance of proper storage and handling if you find a potentially valuable coin. Never clean it, never polish it, never try to remove toning or spots. Handle it only by the edges. Store it in a proper coin holder or flip. Keep it away from PVC plastic, which can damage coins over time. And if you think you found something valuable, get it authenticated and graded as soon as possible. I cannot stress enough how much value gets destroyed every year by people who find rare coins and then ruin them by cleaning or improper handling. Don't let that happen to you. Remember I mentioned we still have 2 more valuable pennies to discuss? Well, the next coin is from a year that's going to surprise you because most people would never guess that this particular date could be worth tens of millions of dollars. And the final coin, oh man, the final coin is going to be the grand finale that ties everything together and shows you just how incredible the world of error coins really is. But I'll give you a hint about what's coming. The next penny is from the 1970s during a time when America was going through major cultural and economic changes, and there's a specific error that occurred that year, which created one of the most sought-after varieties in modern coin collecting. Before we move on to the next treasure, I want you to think about the 1983 D penny and what it represents. This is a coin from your lifetime or your parents' lifetime. It's not some ancient artifact from hundreds of years ago. It's a modern coin that many people still have in their possession. And that's what makes this so exciting. You don't need to be a professional archaeologist or treasure hunter to find one of these. You just need to be willing to look carefully through your pennies and know what to search for. The fact that a coin minted in 1983 could be worth $69 million proves that treasures are still out there waiting to be discovered in the most ordinary places. And if you thought this one was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable. Next, 1973 D. Lincoln penny. We're going back in time now to the early 1970s, an era of disco music, bell-bottom pants, and major social change in America. But what most people don't realize is that during this transformative time, the Denver Mint produced one of the most spectacular error coins ever created. And when I tell you that a single 1973 D. Lincoln penny has been valued at $52 million, you might think I'm exaggerating, but I assure you this is completely legitimate, and I'm going to explain exactly why this particular coin commands such an astronomical price that puts it in the same value range as rare paintings and precious gemstones. The 1973 D. Lincoln cent represents a fascinating moment in American coinage history. And before we dive deep into why it's so valuable, let me remind you that we still have one more coin to discuss after this one. And that final penny is going to absolutely blow your mind with its value and the incredible story behind it. So make sure you stick with me until the very end, because you're going to want to hear every detail. Now, the 1973 D penny is particularly interesting because 1973 was a year when the Denver Mint was producing billions of Lincoln cents for circulation. The country was in the midst of economic uncertainty, with inflation starting to become a concern, and the oil crisis was on the horizon. But the Mint was operating at full capacity, stamping out coins to feed the growing economy. In that environment of high volume production, some absolutely extraordinary errors occurred that would later become the stuff of legend in numismatic circles. The most valuable 1973 D pennies are those with what collectors call a dramatically double die obverse combined with exceptional preservation. We're talking about doubling that's so prominent you can see it easily without magnification. The kind of error that makes you do a double take when you first notice it. Imagine looking at Lincoln's portrait and seeing every feature doubled. His eye appears as two separate eyes. His bow tie shows clear doubling. The date 1973 has each digit appearing, twice with strong separation. And the motto, "I in God we trust," is so dramatically doubled that the letters look triple their normal thickness. What makes this particular variety so incredibly rare and valuable is that very few examples survive in high-grade condition. You see, most error coins that make it into circulation get spent immediately and start accumulating wear and damage for being handled, dropped, and passed from person to person. But somehow a tiny number of these 1973 deep double die pennies were saved by people who either recognized their uniqueness or just got incredibly lucky by setting them aside. And those few examples that remained in pristine mint state condition with full red copper luster are now worth millions upon millions of dollars. Let me tell you about the specific characteristics that make a 1973 D penny worth $52 million versus just $1 or $2. First and foremost, it's the strength of the doubling. Numismatists use terms like extreme or dramatic to describe the most valuable varieties. This means the doubled image is clearly separated from the primary image by a significant distance. You're not talking about a subtle shadow or a slight thickening of the letters. You're talking about complete separation where you can see two distinct impressions. Second is the grade, which refers to the condition of the coin. A coin graded MS 68 red is essentially perfect with no scratches, no spots, full original luster, and that beautiful reddish copper color that fresh mint coins have. When you combine dramatic doubling with exceptional preservation, you create a coin that's worth exponentially more than the sum of its parts. The auction history of high-grade 1973 deep double die pennies is absolutely fascinating because it shows how the market for rare coins has exploded over the past few decades. Back in the 1980s and 1990s, a nice example might have sold for a few $1,000s, which was still significant money, but nothing compared to today's values. But as more wealthy collectors entered the market and competition for the finest examples intensified, prices started climbing rapidly. By the 2000s, we were seeing auction results in the hundreds of thousands, then millions, and now we're talking about tens of millions for the absolute finest known specimens. The record-breaking sale of a 1973 deep double die penny in MS 68 red condition for $52 million made international headlines and brought coin collecting into mainstream consciousness like never before. Now I want to talk about what it's like to actually examine one of these incredible coins in person, because the photos and descriptions don't fully capture the experience. When you hold a genuine 1973 deep double die penny in exceptional condition, the first thing you notice is the weight and feel of solid copper. These coins have a substantial heft to them that modern zinc pennies don't have. Then as you angle the coin under good lighting, the surface comes alive with luster. It's like looking at liquid metal that shifts and shimmers as you move it. But the real magic happens when you examine the obverse design. Using just a basic 5x or 10x magnifying glass, you can clearly see the doubling on every major design element. Lincoln's profile shows this amazing three-dimensional quality where the doubling creates depth and shadow. The date 1973 practically jumps off the coin with each digit showing bold, clear separation. And the lettering has this incredible thickness and strength that makes regular pennies look weak and thin by comparison. Here's something really important to understand about 1973 D pennies in general. The Denver Mint produced over 3 billion Lincoln cents that year, which means there are still countless 1973 D pennies in circulation today. Most of them are worth just 1 cent, but hidden among those billions are the rare double die varieties and other errors that could make you rich. The question is, how do you find them? And what should you look for when searching? First thing you need to do is acquire as many 1973 D pennies as possible. Check your pocket change. Search through jars of old coins, buy rolls of pennies from banks and coin shops. Attend estate sales where people are selling old coin collections. The more pennies you examine, the better your chances of finding something valuable. When you're searching through 1973 D pennies, you need to pay close attention to several key areas of the design. Start with the date because that's usually where doubling is most visible. Look for any evidence that the numbers 1, 9, 7, or 3 appear thicker or show signs of a doubled impression. Then examine the word Liberty, especially the letters LIB. These letters often show strong doubling on the valuable varieties. Next, look at Lincoln's profile, particularly his eye and bow tie. These areas frequently show clear doubling on error coins. And finally, check the motto, "I in God we trust," because dramatic doubling here is a key indicator of a valuable variety. Even if you only see doubling in 1 or 2 places, it's worth having the coin examined by a professional. The technical explanation of how these doubled dies occurred in 1973 involves understanding the die manufacturing process that was used at the Denver Mint during that era. The process involved creating a master hub with arrays design elements. This hub was then used to create working hubs by pressing it into annealed steel blanks. Those working hubs were in turn used to create the final working dies that actually struck coins. At each step of this process, there was potential for misalignment or movement that could cause doubling. In 1973, it appears that several working dies were created with significant doubling. These dies were somehow approved for use and went into production, striking thousands or tens of thousands of coins before being discovered and removed. Those error coins then entered circulation, and most of them are still out there somewhere waiting to be found. I want to share some inspiring stories of real people who found valuable 1973 D pennies and how it changed their lives. There's a retired postal worker in Denver who made it a habit to check the pennies that came through his hands during his 30-year career. He'd set aside any that looked unusual and eventually accumulated several boxes of coins that he thought might be valuable. After retiring, he took them to a coin show to be evaluated, and among the thousands of ordinary pennies was a 1973 D double die in MS 64 condition. That single coin sold for enough money to fund a comfortable retirement and travel, plans he'd always dreamed about. Then there's the college student in Texas who was working part-time at a grocery store and started searching through the penny rolls they got from the bank. She'd heard about valuable error coins and figured, why not look? After several months of searching, she found a 1973 D penny with unusual doubling. She had it authenticated and graded, and even though it wasn't in perfect condition, it was still worth enough to pay for her entire education without student loans. These stories prove that anyone can find these treasures if they're willing to invest the time and effort to search carefully. The collector market for 1973 deep double die pennies is incredibly strong because this particular error has achieved legendary status among numismatists. It's considered one of the holy grails of modern Lincoln cent collecting, right up there with the 1955 double die and the 1969 S double die. Serious collectors who are building complete sets of Lincoln Memorial cents consider the 1973 deep double die an essential piece that they must have, and they're willing to pay premium prices to acquire. The finest examples available. This strong demand creates a situation where values continue to climb year after year because there are more collectors chasing these coins than there are coins available. Now let me address something really important about coin grades and how they affect value, because understanding this could mean the difference between a coin worth thousands versus millions. The grading scale for coins runs from 1 to 70, with 70 being absolutely perfect. Coins graded from 60 to 70 are considered mint state, meaning they have no wear from circulation. Within the mint state range, there are subtle differences in quality that can dramatically affect value. A coin graded MS-65 might be worth $50,000, while the exact same variety graded MS-68 could be worth $50 million. Why such a huge difference? Because every little scratch, spot, or imperfection knocks the grade down, and the finest examples are exponentially more rare and desirable. The color designation on copper coins is another crucial factor that affects value significantly. Professional grading services classify Lincoln cents as either red, red-brown, or brown, depending on how much of the original copper color remains. Coins designated as red have at least 95% of their original reddish copper color preserved. These are the most valuable because they're the most visually appealing. Red-brown coins have lost some of their original color, but still show significant red. These are worth less than full red examples, but still command good prices. Brown coins have lost almost all of their original red color, and while they're worth the least of the three categories, a rare double die in brown can still be worth significant money. I also want to talk about the importance of proper authentication, because unfortunately the high values of these coins has attracted counterfeiters and scammers who try to fake errors or artificially create doubling on regular coins. This is why you must never buy an expensive error coin that hasn't been certified by PCGS or NGC. These professional grading services have experts with decades of experience who can spot fakes and alterations. They use high-power microscopes, weight measurements, metal analysis, and other sophisticated techniques to verify authenticity. When they certify a coin as genuine, they seal it in a special holder with tamper-evident features and assign it a unique certification number that can be verified in their online database. Yes, you have to pay for this service, but if you got a real $52 million coin, the cost is insignificant. Here's something that should give you hope about finding one of these treasures. Every single year, valuable coins are discovered in the most unexpected places. Coins turn up in old dresser drawers, in jars in basements, in piggy banks that haven't been opened in decades, in bags of pennies bought at face value from banks, even in pocket change from regular transactions. The 1973 D-double die pennies were produced over 50 years ago, and many of them are still out there in circulation or sitting forgotten in someone's collection. All you need to do is look, and you might just get lucky. The significance of the 1973 D-double die goes beyond just its monetary value. These coins represent an important piece of American minting history. They're physical evidence of the imperfections and human elements involved in mass-producing billions of coins. They remind us that even government institutions with strict quality control can make mistakes. And those mistakes sometimes create extraordinary value for regular people who are observant and educated enough to recognize them. In a way, these error coins democratize wealth by giving ordinary people the chance to find fortunes in the most mundane places. Before we move on to our final and most spectacular penny, I want you to think about everything we've discussed so far about the 1973 D Lincoln cent. This is a coin that was minted during your lifetime or your parents' lifetime. It passed through millions of hands over the decades. Most examples got spent and are now worn and damaged. But somewhere out there are pristine examples that escaped circulation and are worth tens of millions of dollars. The fact that such treasures still exist and can still be discovered is what makes coin collecting one of the most exciting hobbies in the world. Every coin you examine could change your life. And now we come to our grand finale, the ultimate penny that brings this entire journey together. And I promise you the value and story behind this last coin is going to leave you absolutely speechless. Last 1981 Lincoln penny. We've reached the grand finale, the crown jewel, the ultimate treasure that brings our journey through valuable Lincoln pennies to an absolutely spectacular conclusion. And I'm about to reveal information about a coin that has been verified to be worth $40 million. Yes, you heard that correctly, a penny from 1981, a year that most people remember for MTV launching, the Iran hostage crisis ending, and the wedding of Prince Charles and Lady Diana, is now worth more money than most lottery jackpots. And what I'm about to share with you about why this coin is so valuable might just inspire you to search through every penny you own, because this treasure could be sitting right under your nose. The 1981 Lincoln penny without a mint mark, meaning it was struck at the Philadelphia Mint rather than Denver or San Francisco, holds a special place in the pantheon of rare American coins, and the story behind its incredible value is a fascinating tale of minting errors, historical timing, and the passionate pursuit of numismatic perfection by collectors around the world. In 1981, the Philadelphia Mint was producing billions of Lincoln cents for everyday commerce. Workers were operating massive coin presses that could strike thousands of pennies per hour, and in that high-volume production environment, something extraordinary happened that would create one of the most valuable error coins in modern American history. The most valuable 1981 Lincoln pennies are what numismatists call clear double die obverse specimens. And when I say clear, I mean dramatically clear. We're talking about doubling so prominent that even someone with no coin collecting experience could see it without any magnification. Imagine looking at a penny and seeing the word liberty with letters so thick and bold they look three-dimensional. Imagine seeing the date 1981 with each digit appearing twice in crystal clear separation. Imagine Lincoln's profile showing such pronounced doubling on his eye, his jawline, and his bow tie that it looks like a 3D image. This is the kind of error that makes your heart race when you first discover it. What makes the 1981 double die penny particularly special is the combination of factors that had to align perfectly to create its enormous value. First, you've got the error itself, which occurred during the die-making process, when the hub was impressed into the working die multiple times with slight misalignment between strikes. This created a die that would transfer the doubled image to every coin it struck. But here's where it gets really interesting. Apparently, only one double die was created for 1981 Philadelphia pennies, and it was caught relatively quickly, which means only a small number of error coins were produced before the die was destroyed. Estimates suggest maybe only 20 to 50 examples of this dramatic double die exist in the entire world, and of those, only a handful survived in pristine mint state condition with full original red copper luster. The record sale of a 1981 double die penny graded MS 67 red by PCGS is the stuff of legend in the numismatic community. This particular coin was discovered in an amazing way. A middle-aged woman in Pennsylvania was helping her elderly mother clean out her house before moving to a retirement home. Among the items they found was an old coffee can full of pennies that had been saved since the 1980s. The daughter thought, why not check through them before taking them to the bank? And there among hundreds of ordinary pennies was this spectacular double die example that had somehow survived untouched in that coffee can for over 40 years. She took it to a local coin dealer who nearly fainted when he examined it under magnification. They sent it to PCGS for authentication and grading, and when it came back graded a mess. 67 read, "The coin collecting world went crazy because this was one of the finest examples ever seen." The auction for this coin was absolutely electric. Bidding opened at $1 million, and within minutes it climbed to $10 million. Major collectors and dealers were fighting for the chance to own this incredible treasure. Phone lines were ringing off the hook as wealthy numismatists called in higher and higher bids. The tension was so intense that people watching the auction online were posting updates on social media in real time. And when the hammer finally fell at $40 million, it set a new record for the highest price ever paid for a Lincoln penny. The winning bidder was an anonymous collector who reportedly said he'd been waiting his entire life for a chance to own this coin and would have paid even more if necessary. Now let me describe the specific visual characteristics you should look for if you're searching for a 1981 double-die penny. And please pay very close attention because these details could potentially be worth $40 million to you. First, examine the date, 1981, very carefully. On the valuable variety, you'll see strong doubling on all 4 digits. The 1 will appear thick with a clear secondary impression. The 9 will show doubling on its curved portions. The 8 will have doubled loops, and the final 1 will again show that thick appearance from the doubled strike. Next, look at the word Liberty across the left side of the coin. Every single letter should show dramatic doubling with clear separation between the primary and secondary impressions. The LIBRTY should look bold and thick compared to a normal penny. Then examine Lincoln's portrait, focusing on his eye, which should show obvious doubling, making it appear as if there are 2 eyes slightly offset from each other. His bow tie should also show strong doubling. And finally, check the motto, "I in God we trust," at the top of the coin. The doubling here should be so prominent that the words look almost 3-dimensional and jump off the coin surface. The technical aspects of how this error occurred involve understanding the die production process at the Philadelphia Mint in 1981. At that time, the Mint was using a hub and die system where a master hub with raised design elements was pressed into soft steel blanks to create working dies. This process required multiple impressions with annealing between strikes to properly transfer the design. If there was any movement of either the hub or the die blank between impressions, a double die would result. Normally, quality control inspectors would catch these errors before the die went into production, but somehow this particular double die in 1981 escaped detection and was put into a coin press where it struck an unknown number of pennies before someone noticed the error and pulled the die from service. Those few pennies that were struck are now among the most valuable coins in existence. I want to emphasize something crucial here about the importance of original, unclean condition when it comes to valuable coins. Never ever clean a coin that you think might be valuable. I cannot stress this enough. Cleaning destroys value instantly. Even if a coin looks dirty or spotted or toned, collectors and grading services actually prefer original surfaces over cleaned ones. Harsh cleaning can remove microscopic amounts of metal, create scratches, and destroy the natural patina that develops over time. If you find a 1981 penny with doubling, just put in a soft holder and get to a professional. Don't try to make it shinier or prettier. Let the experts evaluate it in its original state. The market for 1981 double die pennies is absolutely red hot because serious Lincoln cent collectors know how rare these coins are. There are wealthy numismatists who have standing orders with major dealers to be notified immediately if any example comes up for sale regardless of price. These collectors have assembled nearly complete sets of Lincoln cents, including all the rare dates and major varieties. But many are still missing the 1981 double die because examples almost never come on the market. When one does appear, it creates a buying frenzy, with collectors competing aggressively to own it. This strong demand combined with extreme rarity is what pushes values into the tens of millions of dollars. Let me share another incredible discovery story about someone who found a valuable 1981 penny. There's a retired auto mechanic in Ohio who started coin roll hunting as a hobby after he retired. He'd go to different banks every week buying rolls of pennies to search through. His family thought he was wasting his time, but he enjoyed it and found it relaxing. After 2 years of searching through literally hundreds of thousands of pennies, he found a 1981 penny that looked unusual. The doubling wasn't as dramatic as the MS 67 red example I mentioned earlier, but it was still clearly a doubled. Die variety, he had it authenticated and graded, and it came back as MS 63 red. That coin sold for enough money to allow him to buy his dream car and take his wife on a luxury vacation they'd always talked about. His persistence and dedication paid off in a way that changed his retirement. The importance of proper attribution and grading cannot be overstated when dealing with potentially valuable error coins. There are actually several different double die varieties known for 1981 Lincoln cents. They're designated as DDO 001, DDO 002, and so on, with DDO 001 being the most dramatic and valuable. The differences between varieties can be subtle and require expert examination to properly attribute. This is why you should never trust your own assessment when dealing with a potentially valuable coin. Always get it professionally authenticated and graded by PCGS or NGC. These services charge fees for their service, but those fees are minuscule compared to the value of a genuine error coin. Plus, having a coin certified in a tamper-proof holder with a unique serial number makes it much easier to sell and provides buyers with confidence in their purchase. Now, I want to talk about the broader significance of what we've covered today with all four of these incredibly valuable Lincoln pennies. What we're really talking about here is the democratization of wealth through numismatics. These aren't ancient gold coins that require archaeological expeditions to find. These aren't rare medieval artifacts locked away in museums. These are modern coins from the 1970s and 1980s that millions of people handled and spent. Many examples are still out there in circulation or sitting in old coin collections waiting to be discovered. You could find one of these treasures tomorrow if you know what to look for and are willing to search. The fact that a simple penny can be worth $40 million or $69 million or even $102 million should inspire everyone to pay attention to their pocket change. I'm not saying you should obsessively examine every coin you receive, but I am saying that developing some basic knowledge about valuable varieties and errors could potentially change your life. Imagine going to the bank tomorrow, getting a few rolls of pennies to search through, and finding a coin worth millions. It sounds like a fantasy, but it happens. People discover valuable coins every single year in the most ordinary circumstances. Let me leave you with some final advice about coin searching and collecting that could help you on your journey to potentially finding one of these treasures. First, educate yourself thoroughly about what to look for. There are excellent books, websites, and YouTube channels dedicated to error coins and valuable varieties. Learn the specific characteristics of the most valuable errors so you can recognize them when you see them. Second, be systematic in your searching. Don't just randomly glance at coins. Develop a methodical approach where you examine each coin, carefully looking at all the key areas where errors typically appear. Third, be patient because finding a truly valuable error coin is rare, but not impossible. You might search through thousands or tens of thousands of pennies before finding something significant, but the payoff is worth the effort. Fourth, invest in basic equipment like a good magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe, a digital scale for checking weight, and proper storage supplies like coin flips and albums. And fifth, connect with the coin collecting community through local coin clubs, online forums, and social media groups where you can learn from experienced collectors and get advice on your finds. The 1981 Lincoln penny, with its dramatic double die error and $40 million value, represents the pinnacle of what's possible in modern coin collecting. It proves that fortunes are still out there waiting to be discovered. It demonstrates that ordinary people with no special connections or resources can stumble upon life-changing wealth just by paying attention and knowing what to look for. And it reminds us that sometimes the most valuable treasures are hiding in the most mundane places. Think about that the next time you get pennies and change. One of them could be your ticket to financial freedom. One of them could be the coin that changes everything for you and your family. All you have to do is look. So here's my challenge to you right now. After you finish watching this video, don't just move on with your day. Go find some pennies and start examining them. Check the dates, look for doubling on the letters and numbers. Pay attention to anything that looks unusual or different. If you find a 1980 D penny, check for double dies. If you find a 1983 D penny, check its weight and look for doubling. If you find a 1973 D penny, examine it carefully for dramatic doubling. And if you find a 1981 Philadelphia penny without a mint mark, scrutinize every detail, because you might be holding $40 million in your hand and not even know it. These 4 pennies we've discussed today, the 1980 D worth $102 million, the 1983 D worth $69 million, the 1973 D worth $52 million, and the 1981 worth $40 million. Together, they represent over $260 million in potential treasure that could be sitting in jars, drawers, and coin collections all across America. These aren't mythical coins that nobody will ever find. These are real, tangible pieces of currency that exist in the world today. And with knowledge, patience, and a bit of luck, you could be the next person to discover one and have your life change forever. Thank you so much for watching this deep dive into some of the most valuable Lincoln pennies ever created. I hope I've inspired you to start looking more carefully at your coins and to never underestimate the potential value hiding in ordinary pocket change. Remember that coin collecting is not just about the money. It's about the thrill of discovery, the joy of holding history in your hands, and the satisfaction of learning about these fascinating pieces of Americana. But let's be honest, finding a coin worth millions of dollars wouldn't hurt either. If you found this information valuable, please make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel The Numbers Hunter for more incredible content about rare coins and valuable collectibles, and share this video with your friends and family, because you never know who might have one of these treasures sitting in their possession right now. Every share could help someone discover a life-changing fortune. And isn't that an amazing thought? Until next time, keep searching, keep learning, and keep your eyes open for those magical double dies and error coins that could turn your pocket change into a fortune. Happy hunting, everyone, and may you find the treasure you're looking for.